Welcome to the Deal by Me podcast, where we ask guests to tell us your story and we put the spotlight on you. Hello there, this is Dr. James W. Smith, your host. We transform lives by encouraging and inspiring. Someone encouraged and inspired this host, a former lawyer, gambler, inmate, and his life was transformed. The same can happen to you. So when you listen to any of the Deal by Me podcasts, please support this ministry with a monthly recurring amount for as little as $3. Check out my website and see what I offer that can be encouraging and inspiring and transforming for you. I'm available for speaking engagements, in person and virtual seminars, so please contact me through my website, www.dealbyme.com. I have with me Tamara Zoner, who is a speaker and coach on a mission to create greater happiness in the world by teaching individuals and groups the actions and habits of happiness. She is energetic and enthusiastic and brings a room to life with her positive presence, even when that presence is virtual. I know you're going to enjoy this interview, so please stay tuned and hear what uh, Tamara has to say to us. Tamara, uh, it's good to have you come and share with us today. Would you tell us a little bit about yourself and where you've been interviewed from?
Absolutely. Thank you, James. I am being interviewed from the Metro Detroit area of Michigan, where it's a nice, hot, humid day. And I am a coach and a speaker who got into happiness because I was looking for some. I was in a darker place in my life, in a relatively controlling and abusive marriage, and could remember a happier version of me. And when nothing was working to fix the marriage, I turned to taking better care of myself and happened upon, one might say, or one might say the universe provided me with exactly what I needed to become more confident, stronger, heal, and leave that marriage and start teaching others what helped me get out of that dark hole and into this bright, beautiful life that I'm living now.
Hmm. Well, great. I've had a chance to look at your profile, and I must say, really interesting, very thoughtful, and just deal with happiness is really an area that I think listeners will really appreciate today. So I'm just interested and uh, thankful that you've decided to share with listeners of this podcast. So I know you help people create a life they love. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I can tell that from reading your profile, and it obviously sounds like a big task. So where does one start if they interested in trying to find love or be happy? Is there anything that brings them to that point, or what would you say to them?
What brings people to that point is really any kind of dissatisfaction with their lives. So,
Hmm.
some of my clients are just plugging along and life's okay, but it doesn't feel good. It's not like they thought it was going to be. And some are unhappy, like really unhappy. And where we start is getting clear on what they want life to look and feel like. So we literally sit down and make a list. What do you want your life to look and feel like? What do you want to be, do, feel, and have in your life?
Mm.
And once they get clearer on those things, then we know which areas to really dig into to teach them the tools to actually create it. And it's really humbling and beautiful to watch people go from having no confidence, low energy, unhappiness to 6 months later, feeling happier than they've ever been because, James, they've done the work and
Mhm.
they're starting to do the work. And happiness really is a practice.
Mm, mm. I like that. That's you know, I'm glad I'm talking to you today because maybe maybe what you're saying is going to be helpful to me. This is awesome, because there are a lot of people who are unhappy, no question about that. And so I'm always curious when I'm talking with someone who sharing that kind of perspective that you're sharing today. So, how does a person's relationship, with themselves relate to their success in life? Because sometimes we can feel um, have I guess, a negative kind
Mhm,
of perspective on life.
mhm.
Then other people, are very positive. So I assume that what you share will help in either of these situations. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Our relationship with ourselves is everything. It
Okay.
it really is what I believe the foundation for our happiness. Because if we don't like ourselves,
Mm,
then by default, we don't treat ourselves well. We don't give ourselves love. We don't respect ourselves. And we won't believe that we're worthy of living a beautiful life. In fact, we may even sabotage ourselves by, eating terrible food, not getting enough sleep, binging on all the things that help us to avoid ourselves instead
mm,
of having the courage really to look deeply at who we are. And if there's necessary repair that needs to happen, to taking time with that. And I see that a lot. It really is, that critical voice that's in the back of almost everybody's head. So if you have it, you're not alone. Even I have it. But the difference is that I recognize it and I know
okay.
it's not the truth,
Okay.
and I can take the steps to quiet it down
Mm,
and then support myself in love.
okay. I kind of follow what you're saying. That makes a lot of sense. I heard you mention something about this critical voice,
Mhm.
and I assume a lot of people have that.
Mhm.
They want to do something, but there's something else that tells them that they can't do it, or they are too critical of themselves to believe that they can do it. So, what do you mean when you tell them to start supporting themselves? Is there some magic to this?
I don't know about magic, but there is a process when we
Okay.
can, and it all comes with awareness. So the first step is becoming more aware of how you're talking to yourself. That voice in your head, whether you're saying I'm too stupid or too fat or I'm not good enough, to start to catch it in the act.
Hmm.
And then the process that I'll take people through is catching that most harmful statement that we say to ourselves and then interrupting it over
Mm,
and over and over until we break the pattern.
mm,
So we go through these, spirals of negative thinking, and that's normal. That's how our brains evolved. That's why we survived and why we live in big, beautiful houses instead of caves. We knew where the dangers were. We could watch out for the negatives, but
mhm.
our brains still act that way. And we don't need it to be so negative. We don't need it to be so protective. And so, if we can bring awareness to the most critical things that we say to ourselves, then we can also, second step, interrupt the pattern. And then, third step, create a new belief, turn it around. And what I found, James, is that the core negative belief that many, many people have is that I am not enough, whether it's
Mhm.
good enough, smart enough, pretty enough, thin enough, talented enough. It all boils down to I'm not enough. And
Mm,
so that final piece and the practice is to turn it around into I am enough, and then
okay.
find evidence that demonstrates how and why you are enough. People love you, you're a successful podcaster, you get paid to do something that
Mm,
you enjoy or that you're good at. And then you just keep repeating that process over and over until that supportive voice is the stronger, louder one in your head.
You know, I'm I'm very impressed with your conversation today because there are lots of folk, a lot of individuals who somehow, uh, find themselves down,
Mm-hmm.
depressed, unhappy. Something is happening with them, and so I am interested to know, as a minister who over the years of pastored for almost 33 years before I retired. And when I retired, I talked about how I wanted to actually be able to do something that will uh, be encouraging, inspiring, and transforming. And what I want to do when I talk with people is to find out what would they say to somebody who is in this state of unhappiness. They're unhappy. They're a little depressed. They're going through some other situation in their lives that just make them feel like they can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to them that will give them some encouraging uh, thoughts,
Mm.
or that would encourage or inspire or help them transform their lives?
I love that question. The first thing that I do is just honor them where they're at.
Hmm.
There's no arguing with reality, right? If we're feeling down and depressed, if we're going through a hard, challenging time, then we honor that. And we can do that for ourselves as well. So simply saying, I see you, because we all just want to be seen and heard, right? I
Hmm.
witness you. I feel like what you're going through, if it feels so heavy and challenging to you. So simply witnessing them.
Hmm.
And then with their permission, if they've asked for advice, right? Because I'm never going to change somebody's tire who didn't ask me
Hmm. Okay.
to. With their permission, would you like one of the things I love to ask, and I invite clients to ask their friends and loved ones, is, do you want a shoulder or a solution?
Hmm.
Now, most people are coming to me because they want both, right? They want a shoulder so they can get it all out. And then they want a solution because they want to change their experience. They're tired of being sad and depressed and struggling. And so the key thing to note, though, first of all, is that life has constant up and downs, right? We're all expanding and contracting. Even when life is at its best, we have moments of down, right? And then we come back up.
Hmm.
And the other key is that when we're in those darkest moments, to notice where there's joy and where there's beauty, even if it's just glimmers. Even if, you could be at a funeral. It's a really hard situation. You've lost somebody you love.
Hmm.
But the glimmer in there is that you get to see family and loved ones you maybe haven't seen in years. And
Hmm.
the spark of life is within those moments where you're appreciating the life that person led, the life you have in front of you, the connection you have with the lives in the room. So there's always a way to look for the good.
Hmm.
And this is when the practices and those habits of happiness come in the most handy and when they're the most important to utilize, because life has its moments. I get sad, I get unhappy, but I know it doesn't last because everything changes.
Hmm. Wow. Well said. I
Thank
mean,
you.
I, I'm I guess I'm speechless. It's the way you have laid that out makes so much sense, and I know listeners of this podcast will certainly appreciate what you just said. Listeners, don't go any place, please, because Tamara is giving us such good information. But first of all, let me ask Tamara. Um, if someone's interested in getting to know more about you, to contact you, I don't know if you have a book or anything, blogs, or that folk can go to, website.
Mhm.
Would you share that with listeners of this podcast now?
Absolutely. I have a website. You can either take the easy route and just hit tamarazoner.com, and it will take you to my website, which is
Okay.
alifeyoulovenow.com.
Okay.
And there is an ebook on that website, also some blogs, and you can also find me on Facebook and Instagram. It's a pretty unique name that I have, so you're likely to find me.
I agree with the unique name now, Tamara Zoner. Okay. Okay. Thank you so much. And we will make certain that we share that again before we end our conversation. Let
Thank
me
you.
ask you a couple more questions that I think listeners will be interested in. Uh, what's the most important thing a person can do to positively impact uh, his or her life? Uh, even I go through this, and I'm trying to think what is. I'm hoping that I'm doing something to help somebody, and that will also be impactful to me also, but I'm not sure. So, do you have anything that you would say to someone who uh, want to positively impact his or her life?
Absolutely. I always have something to say, James.
Okay, all right.
I the the first thing I would say is take really good care of yourself. That's the first thing, especially people like us who are in service of others. We think we have to serve others before ourselves, but in fact, the most beautiful and loving thing that we can do is to take really good care of ourselves so that we can be of service to others. And that means some things people don't like eating food that serves your body, moving your body so that you can stay strong, and getting enough sleep. If we just went to taking care of the body and taking better care of the body, it impacts the mind, and our thoughts become better the better we're taking care of this physical package. So if there was only one thing you could do, I would say take a walk for 10 minutes a day with no earbuds, no songs, not even a podcast. Listen to the nature around you.
Hmm,
Feel how your body is responding to the movement, and just notice and bring more awareness to yourself.
hmm,
And in doing that, we also open this connection. You're a pastor, a minister, to our source, right? We also clean up the line of communication between us and God, because this vessel is where He put us.
hmm,
And so when we start to take better care of ourselves, especially when we don't feel like it because we're sad and down and we just want to, eat a bowl of chips and Netflix and binge. That's when we can start to feel the shifts in our emotions and our minds. And then, if all else fails, call somebody you trust, like a pastor or a minister,
okay.
and have a shoulder.
Hmm. Well said. Well said. I'm listening to you has just inspired me today. I thought I was supposed to be the one who do showing encouragement, inspiration, and transformation, but you're doing it to me, and I'm thankful. This is really great information that you're sharing with us, and I'm so thankful to you for doing this. But I know that this has not been a easy task for you because you shared it in the beginning. You
Mhm.
know, that your marriage obviously was not going well. And you were going through some difficulties in that. Uh, and so there had to be something that uh, put you on this path that you wanted to kind of deal with personal growth and development. And
Mhm.
you obviously had some big influences in this. Can you talk about that a little bit for
Mhm.
us? I think listeners of this podcast would be interested to know.
Yeah. The first piece for me was really starting to become aware that of how unhappy I was, and to be honest about it, and to stop just trying to glaze over and ignore it. And so when I got honest with myself and realized I was unhappy, I had tried some things to fix the marriage, right? I had tried to just be a better wife and make him happy. And when nothing worked, I turned a little more inward and I started looking for teachers. I started looking for mentors because I didn't know how to do it myself. And so I started listening to, I mean, this was back in the early 2000s, so it wasn't even called a podcast yet, but there were, personal development things online that I could find. I could read books. So I started reading books. I saw the movie The Secret. I read every single one of the teachers in that film. I read their books. And I really started reaching out for help. And that's when I got more into personal development. It had always been an interest of mine. I had
Mhm.
studied psychology and human development in college. And so it was very natural for me to say, ooh, this is starting to help me now. I want to help others. So, really reaching out to someone who can help you, whether it's a minister or a therapist or a coach,
Mhm.
we need a hand.
Mhm.
We need a hand. We need someone to show us the light when we can't see it for ourselves.
So they're saying, and I may be quoting it wrong, that in times of uh, difficulties and in times of trouble, we need someone that we can call on, hold on, whatever. So I hear what you're saying very well. Um, you know, you obviously get, um, I would say, sometimes down. And most folks are not positive all the time. We have these negative moments in our lives. So tell me, how do you stay positive when awful things are happening to you?
Mm. I will say that you don't necessarily have to stay positive, but you always have to return to the positive.
Mm,
Right? You always have to return to the positive. So even I get down and discouraged, and I remember what I've learned. I remember that everything changes. And I have a mantra too that is everything happens for me.
okay.
Everything happens for me. And so I don't know what it is today, but there's something on the other side of this that is like in service of my life and my ability to serve others. And then I devote myself to my self-care. So when it feels like we just can't dig ourselves out of that hole, we have to turn to what has worked in the past, whether it is calling a friend or for me, I get on my yoga mat and I start moving through a yoga flow and it clears my mind because it's really our thoughts that are keeping us spiraling down.
Hmm.
It's our thoughts. It's not even the situation at hand. It's our thoughts about the situation. So we just need to interrupt those thoughts and maybe clear them out and maybe turn them around and start again. It comes back to really simple practices of breathing and looking for the good and getting help and support where you need it and when you need
Hmm. I am just kind of spellbound by
it.
your answers and the things that you're saying today because it speaks to almost anyone, and especially I know the listeners to this podcast. Uh, they listen to the podcast because most of them sometimes are going through something and they need a word of encouragement. They need a word of inspiration. And what you are saying is right down the path that I think will give some kind of comfort to a lot of people. And I'm grateful that you have chosen this path. You know, just a couple of months before I decided to retire, and I did that in December after 2 months short of 33 years of pastoring at the same church. I wanted to start this podcast because I wanted to continue my ministry.
Yeah.
with encouraging, inspiring, and hopefully transforming some lives. And I said that I wanted to just interview people who had these kind of positive stories. Maybe they've gone through something and they show how they came back out of it.
Hmm.
And you today, you have really done that. And I'm just uh, grateful for you sharing that with us. So many people don't like to share the stories. They don't like to go deep and talk about how they over come or how they overcame, and to just hear somebody do it is very powerful. It is very powerful. So, what practices do you recommend for someone who was on this path? Obviously, they have a negative outlook. They just
Hmm.
don't. They are not, looking positive. They are just seem like they feel as if they're not going to make it. So, is there anything that you could tell them to do to kind of break out of this cycle?
There are so many practices available. The key is that you actually do them.
Okay.
I always tell my clients, I tell my kids the same thing. I can hand you a toolbox full of tools, but if you refuse to pick one up, it won't work.
Mm,
But
mm,
if you pick it up, it will work for you. So, depending on where people are at, the first thing can simply be to just breathe.
mm,
Right? I heard a quote once that has stuck with me for years by Gabrielle Bernstein, and she said, "Your breath will save your life." So when it all feels too heavy, just return to the breath. And that's one of the first tools I teach is just a simple breathing technique of putting your attention on your breath, letting it get a little deeper and slower than your usual breath, and then putting your attention on your heart center while you breathe.
mm-hmm,
You do that for a couple of minutes.
mm,
Like the stress hormone in your body, the cortisol, reduces with just a couple minutes of breathing.
mm,
So, if that's where you're at, if that's all you can do that and do it a few times a day. And then we build on practices. So, if you're willing to do that a few times a day, then maybe you're willing to add that mindful 10-minute walk once or twice a day. And then maybe you're willing to start paying attention to your thoughts and noticing that they are not always true. We have a
wow,
lot of thoughts every day,
wow.
thousands and thousands, and most of them are negative, and hardly any of them are really true if we're super critical and super
Mm,
negative. So, really starting to pay attention to the quality of our thoughts is one way that we can move from a dark to a light space
mm,
pretty rapidly.
wow. You've got me spellbound today. That's all I can say. That's all I can say. Well,
Thank you.
there you have it. Tamara Zoner, who is a speaker and coach, and I have to admit that she is on a mission to create greater happiness in the world by teaching individuals and groups the actions and habits of happiness. What an awesome interview we've had with Tamara today. And I want to ask her to share again how listeners of this podcast can uh, reach her, get more information about her.
Thank you, James. This has been such a pleasure and an honor. And you can just search tamarazoner.com, or if you're on Facebook or Instagram, look up Tamara Zoner and you will find me.
Thank you so very, very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so very much. And until next time, peace and blessings to each of you.